Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. What I will say, though, is while I'm very glad that the person that was arguably responsible for some of the largest, driving some of the most amounts of death threats and violent threats, not just to my office, but to plenty of people across the country, I also kind of feel like I'm like waiting for the cutscene at the end of a Marvel movie after all the credits have rolled, and then you see like the villain's like hand reemerge out to grip over like the end of a building or something. But deplatforming works, and it is important, and there you go. Good things can happen.
Wielding the infinity gauntlet and is going to snap his fingers.
I think you'd like that. You couldn't resist. You disagree with what she's saying substantively, but you respect the Marvel illusion.
Absolutely. I strongly disagree with what she had to say there. I know there's this debate among progressive people about deplatforming, et cetera. This is not an example of deplatforming. He was not, like shut out of public speaking spaces because of protesting or pressure, and now he's not going to get his message out anymore because he was deplatformed. He was not deplatformed. He was exited from Fox News. We are coming to understand for reasons that are not totally clear. I've expressed my theories in several other segments, but no one is suggesting it is because of his views or something like that.
Yeah, Bronco Marchitich, who's been on the show and who's a writer at Jacobin, he had a good read on this, I think. He says, the only thing reported so far is Tucker Carlson was fired by the billionaire owner of the media company he worked for because of a lawsuit by an ex-employee for being bullied and discriminated at his show. Nothing to do with his Ukraine coverage, as RFK Jr. has argued, and certainly not thanks to deplatforming. Or maybe it was an RFK Jr. argued it was about the pharmaceutical advertising. Yeah. But people have all been putting
it's not even proven it has to do with the Grossberg lawsuit might be playing a factor.
Right, but he's saying what's been reported. And that is the only thing that's been reported so far. What has been reported so far is that it has to do with these sexual statements in the workplace and the anti-Semitic statements apparently having to do with this Grossman producer. Now, everyone else from AOC who says, well, they're being deplatformed, he's being punished for his lies. People have said, well, the Dominion content is what did him in. He's being punished for lying on TV. I think Glenn Greenwald and RFK Jr. talking about how that just last week they had this they had RFK Jr. on the show. Was it about that and the things that he said? Was it about talking about critiquing the advertisers, the pharmaceutical advertisers on the show? That was the last straw. Everyone is trying to make this into something that it likely is not.
Clearly is not.
And some new stuff might percolate out that was driving this decision. I know that there is the implication that the Dominion lawsuit surfaced private messages where he was critical of the Murdoch family and senior management.
Yeah, that is what I think is ultimately going to be the key here. The Washington Post had that reporting that these messages that he had, again, private messages, he's not out there bad-mouthing the company. We all have private messages that we would like to stay private, I assume, but because of the Dominion lawsuit, that became public knowledge to people at Fox, and that might have put him in a difficult position. Yeah. That is what I would bet money on is the most likely reason, for the prime reason for the exit. Everything else could have played a factor. But anyway, this is very par for the course for AOC. And whatever, like Tucker has obviously criticized her very strenuously, no shortage of times.
He has been obsessed, obsessively covering everything that she says and does.
Within her rights to be, celebrating here. But the broader point about deplatforming, and what is she's trying to substantiate. She's trying to substantively deplatform his views, which, again, if she was leading the pack on what the left should actually be having to say about Ukraine and foreign policy, maybe she would be less eager for the entire Tucker message to get thrown off the network.
I think from AOC's perspective, the good doesn't justify the bad. If you're on the receiving end of some of the stuff that I think that she absolutely does get, that whether or not you want to blame Tucker for it, I don't think that his coverage of AOC helps, shall we say. So I don't expect for her to say, well, I'm getting death threats at my home, but it was all worth it because somebody covered Ukraine. Do I think that she should, in the left, broadly speaking, should be more at the forefront of that kind of messaging? Absolutely. But the idea that Tucker Carlson is the only person who could do it. I mean, AOC was just...
The idea that everyone should be shut down, deplatformed, gotten rid of, not allowed to speak in public.
Right, that's what I was going to say, is that AOC just yesterday was on with Jen Psaki, Biden's, of course, former press secretary, on her news show on MSNBC. And instead of using that platform to talk about some of the issues that I think have really generated Tucker Carlson's audience, used it to do the opposite, to call for Tucker Carlson to be deplatformed. She just recently, in this interview, called for Tucker Carlson to be fired. So I do think that doesn't help the perception that this, intolerant left stereotype that exists. And I also think it's deeply naive, because Tucker Carlson is not going anywhere. He doesn't have to disappear. I mean, he could choose to live a peaceful, nice life, but he doesn't have to. And the idea that we're going to hear less from him simply because he's not at Fox News, this is bad news for cable media, for corporate media. It's not bad news for Tucker Carlson and the ability for him to have reach.
We don't even know that it's bad for
all.
corporate news. Again, as I said in the other segment, they could find a replacement who does just fine. Fox is going to be fine. Tucker's going to be fine. The same kind of messages are going to be out there. So I don't know what worked.
Being fine and having to recoup from a significant loss of your highest earning staff member are two different things. I'm not saying that Fox News is going to go the way of the dinosaur, but it takes a hit. And Tucker Carlson and other popular figures making the choice to no longer be at networks and instead hang up their own shingle, take the Joe Rogan route, I think speaks to the declining value, at least for superstars, to stay at corporate, cable news outlets. I think that's just true. But I think that she's right about the claw coming over the building, because what that might mean, and people have made this complaint and criticism of Glenn Greenwald and some other folks that have left their institutions, that once you're free from the institution, you're also free from whatever kind of constraints they might have been putting on you. So Tucker Carlson could leave Fox News and be much more radical, be much more aggressive toward AOC, behave in ways that she certainly wouldn't approve of. Alternatively, he might be willing to be more critical of Fox News or be more critical of certain candidates that we know from the Dominion disclosures Fox News was very reluctant to criticize, namely Donald Trump.
Yeah. Bottom line, he's not going anywhere. His views are not going anywhere. They're literally going somewhere. They're not going to be on Fox News anymore, but they're not exiting the discourse. The discourse is going to be substantially unaffected by this. So it seems a little bit naive. And again, just speaks to her whole, she's leaned into this kind of, I would say it's a censorship mindset, even if it's not, it's not explicit government censorship. I mean, she came close in the Psaki clip to calling for, is this even legal to say all these crazy things? Jen Psaki nodding along. Yeah, the incitement to violence kind of stuff. That gets very slippery, because sometimes what mainstream people think is not correct. Sometimes people outside the mainstream are raising valid points about foreign policy or about COVID or about whatever it is, media criticism. And there's just this mindset that she has that, despite her background as a kind of progressive person who should be clashing with mainstream forces, she has leaned into them in a very, trust the experts, trust the science kind of way. Right? Yeah,
absolutely. And I would say this as some advice, not that she's interested in my advice, but as I've watched these Democratic Party presidential candidates emerge, I listen to their messaging, I listen to AOC, and I reflect on Bernie. I think what a lot of folks are missing that was part of the Bernie formula was that Bernie never personalizes anything. Mm-hmm. It's never about Bernie. You ask Bernie his birthday and he would say, some great things happened in September. Let me tell you about the history of American labor. You know what I mean? It's just never about him. Classic Virgo. But you see here AOC, she makes it, and I'm not saying that she doesn't have real personal complaints that are legitimate, but 1/6 was about her in the bathroom. Tucker Carlson is about the attacks that she has received. There have been slights against these new candidates that are running where they have been taken out of polls and been treated very badly and maligned by Karine Jean-Pierre. All these things have been true. But I think as valid as people's concerns are and their grievances are, people don't want a grievance culture candidate. They want someone who is redirecting to the needs of the American people? What were the consequences of 1/6 to American democracy, if that's the angle that you want to take? What are the consequences? What are the broader consequences of Tucker Carlson's presence on Fox News versus his absence from Fox News? Can she stand up for Fox News viewers who are maybe misled and lied to because of the Dominion disclosures?
I completely agree, especially from a member of Congress.
Yeah.
Don't make it about yourself if you're a member of Congress, because you're there to serve the American people, not boost your own, ideally, not boost your own profile or prominence. But so many of them make it all about themselves because they have egos about them. And she's obviously gotten a lot of press attention, positive mainstream press attention, magazine cover articles, and that kind of thing can affect how one sees oneself.
Yeah, well, there's time to change. We'll see how this perspective of hers evolves going forward, in the beginning of what I'm sure is a long career. We'll have more Rising for you after this.